B'Shem Hashem Na'aseh v'Natzliach, Shir Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Tuesday night Jewish Intimacy series. We're back, Baruch Hashem, to give some insights based on the Iggeret HaKodesh of the Ramban to help us in this generation. B'ezrat Hashem, tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema, for Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Nesriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahides that continue to contribute and help us either by watching the shiurim, sharing them, donating to the organization, and anything else that they can, Baruch Hashem. Anyone that wants to donate on our website, you can go to be'ezrathashem.org, or anyone that is clever enough to take advantage of this auspicious time to do a tikkun abrit, whether for men or for women. As I'm sure many of you already know, it's applicable to both. For any acts of immorality in the past, you can go to tikkunabrit.live and do 1 or 2 or 100 tikkunim or whatever you can do, as this is the time to do it during the year. Now, tonight's shiur is going to address a very, very important topic as we're going back to this series. This Iggeret HaKodesh, Jewish Intimacy, has been really a lifesaver and a marriage saver for anyone that has actually been paying attention. But what happens sometimes is that sometimes only the husband watches it or only the wife watches it. So one of them gets elevated while the other one stays behind. And this could certainly create problems just because, one of the people stays unaware. The same goes for, for young people that are not so young anymore, because we live in a generation where there's a bunch of old men and women that are walking around single as if they have all the time in the world, waiting for the perfect one, being picky about who they're going to marry and who they're going to settle down with, and forgetting about the fact that the clock is ticking, not because of childbirth or all types of fake studies that were done 400 years ago, but rather because to build a family is part of the Jewish life. It's part of humanity altogether. And when you don't build a Jewish family, or you don't build a family at all, you end up living a life full of regrets. But that usually happens when it's in fact too late to fix it. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. But of course, we always have to look at what our sages say, because many of the things that we discussed in this series have to do with elevating yourself, not just in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual sense. And elevating yourself in the spiritual sense is critical in order for you to achieve holiness in your family. Now, if you're walking around as if you're God's gift to the world, if you're walking around with anger, if you're walking around with all types of bad character traits, and you bring that to your house, it's a certainty that your marriage is going to be a disaster if you're going to get married in the first place. So some of the things that we've discussed in this series during the first 5 chapters has really been the critical tools you need in order to achieve Shlom Bait. But that how it actually impacts the intimacy between you and your spouse. Now, the Ramban, just to give you a refresher, since we've taken a break out of this series for several months, we started the 6th chapter, which is called the 5th path, the quality of the union, meaning how, the quality of the actual intimate act itself. And briefly, the Ramban started by saying that after teaching us everything he already has in the first 5 chapters, he's now going to help us, take this into practice. Every pious and modest man, wherever he speaks, will speak softly, gently, calmly, and will never talk arrogantly. What is he talking about? He's talking about how you handle your matters at home. How you are at work may sometimes require for you to be aggressive, may require for you to show, anger. Don't be angry, but you could show anger. Your employees are not doing their job. People are stealing from you. Customers don't want to pay. There are times that it's necessary for a person to express themselves with a little more aggression than others. There are times that a person has to act in ways that he doesn't want to act in order to get certain things done, in order to achieve a certain purpose. But this must stay at work. You can't bring your business to the house. And I don't mean the business as far as talking about which customer came in and which customer left and which employee you're going to fire and which one you're thinking about hiring. No. What I'm talking about is your mood. What I'm talking about is your mentality and what happened during that day. The same goes for the ladies that are in the workforce. If you're going to bring your work to the house, and you're going to bring your mood, and you're going to bring the gossip, and you're going to bring all of these different issues, this is one of the recipes for disaster, not just for peace in the home, but disaster as far as intimacy. Why? Because if you're thinking about work, the only intimacy that you're thinking about is intimacy to relieve, frustration. It's not real intimacy. It's simply lust. So what we're trying to achieve here is to get each and every single one of us to use this beautiful tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, called intimacy, in order for us to even serve Him through that. And in fact, if you've been paying attention for the last 36 or so lectures, it's actually will give you the ability to serve Him at the highest possible level through intimacy, if you know how to do it right. Now, if a person is coming home with a lot of frustration and therefore, as soon as his wife simply says hello, but the food is not steaming hot on the table and he's already yelling, if the kids are jumping at him and he's not in the mood, if all of these different things are annoying her or annoying him, then of course this is going to kill your intimate life. And in fact, sometimes one of the things that a person needs to do before they walk into the house is simply take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just regroup and put everything that you did during that day behind and come home as if you just woke up. Come home as if you are, excited to be home. And this is something that's very important for people that have very difficult jobs, very difficult, times in their life. So the Ramban is first telling us that the way you communicate to your wife, the way you communicate to your husband has to be gentle, has to be soft, has to be calm, and certainly cannot be arrogant. If you're one of these people that's walking around like you are a gift to society, which unfortunately has become all too common in the world today, especially as people try to emulate these, the celebrities and all of these people that have a stage because of their arrogance. So you walking around telling people how good looking you are or how smart you are and how this and how that, as much as society is chasing those types of people, marriages run away from it. Healthy marriages, at least. No one likes and no one wants to be married to an arrogant person. Now, arrogance is expressed in different ways, which we'll discuss later on. But the Ramban continues and he says, you will walk humbly with his head bowed, his eyes looking downwards. He will behave like this in all matters. However, the wicked man is just the opposite in all of his ways. And you must study this concept wherein that the activities using body parts that are not considered disgraceful by people, they do have disgrace from disgraceful activities. Even more so in activities of the body part that are considered disgraceful due to the deeds of people. And all the more so concerning a disgraced body part or deed. In so many words, the Ramban is bringing two major points as far as disgraceful body parts and parts that bring disgrace even if the body part is not disgraceful. The disgraceful body parts are in essence the body parts that are supposed to be covered. Okay? If you're going to walk around, especially women that are walking around with, flashing their bodies, and in so many words, the whole world, knows what you look like, even if you weren't wearing that shmata that you have on yourself, then you should know that this is going to destroy your marriage. Even if your husband tells you he likes it, even if your husband tells you you look beautiful, even if your husband uses other words to describe you, it will destroy your marriage. And I'll tell you in a moment why. On the other hand, there are parts of the body part that are not supposed to be covered, like your eyes, your mouth, your hands. But if you use them in a disgraceful way, looking at things that you're not supposed to, speaking in an unholy, dirty way, touching things, that you're not supposed to, like some of these people that for whatever reason or another, they feel they have the permission to touch everyone. They have the permission to touch everyone. She's a doctor, but she decides that she wants to comfort the patient by putting her hand on him. Who gave you permission to touch the guy? If you're actually doing something, and you have to, no problem. But if you're just simply saying hello, what need is there for that? Oh no, that's bedside manner. Yes, you're right, it is bedside manner, but it's not for you to do. It's not for you to do, you could do it in other ways. The same concept goes with people that have employees. When they, if it's you're a woman, you're running a business, you have male employees, want to say hello, no problem. But always keep it professional. Don't call each other by first name. Don't touch each other. Don't hug each other. Don't high-five each other. Why? These types of things end up ruining marriages. Now, the obvious way that they ruin marriages is that they lead to adultery. The not so obvious way is that it's sinful behavior altogether. Now, a person would say, no, but come on, I'm just giving my coworker a hug. What's the big deal? So what if she's a pretty girl, or she's not such a pretty girl, or he's a married man with 5 kids. I'm never going to be with him. I'm married also. So what? No, you're not understanding. The creator of the world wrote our Torah. Okay? He put the Torah, that's the law of the world. That's the law of creation. And in so many words, in this Torah, he told us, each time we do a mitzvah, we create an angel that's going to be a defendant, and every time we do a sin, it's going to create a bad angel, or a demon, if you want to call it, that's going to be a prosecutor. Now, if you create enough prosecutors, it's not just something you have to deal with down the road. It's something that you could deal with even in this world. As this very famous story that happened at the time of the Chafetz Chaim, where the Chafetz Chaim would repeatedly tell the children to go see this amazing spectacle that was taking place. What was this spectacle? There was a woman who one day, a teenage girl, who one day started acting strange, started moving her body in unnatural ways, started speaking with the voice of someone else, and the family was very concerned. They went to the Chachamim, and the Chachamim went and saw this young woman, where one of those Chachamim was Rav Elchanan Wasserman, Alav Shalom, the Talmid of the Chafetz Chaim, who was sent with several other great Chachamim, and confirmed that this teenage girl that was going through extraordinary difficulty, all types of contortions in her body, all types of strange sounds coming out of her throat, she has a Dybbuk. What's a Dybbuk? A Dybbuk is a soul of someone that has died, that was a wicked person, that got permission from the Bet Din of heaven to enter somebody's body and torture them. And once Rav Elchanan Wasserman and the other Chachamim went there, the Dybbuk revealed to them that she's a female sinner who got the permission to enter this girl's body because the young girl has done a avera. What an avera did she possibly do? You're probably thinking she was probably promiscuous, she was immodest, she was idol worshiper. No, something much smaller, or at least it appears so. This young girl, teenage girl, drank water without saying a blessing. That's it. That was enough for the Bet Din of heaven to determine to allow this Dybbuk to enter her body. And when asked if she knew of the Chafetz Chaim, if this Dybbuk knew who the Chafetz Chaim was, The Dybbuk got scared and said, yes, he's considered as a great Tana in Shamayim because of his tremendous dedication to learning Torah. And when the Rabbanim promised to have the Kaddish recited over this Dybbuk's neshama, to elevate it and eventually get it out of the kafekela that she is in, the Dybbuk agreed to leave the body of the girl. And the girl's life returned to normal. The Chafetz Chaim encouraged the children to go and see this amazing spectacle while it was happening. And he said that this could very well be the last Dybbuk that we will witness until Mashiach arrives. So we see from here, Rabotai, on something much smaller than immorality, a person can suffer. I'm not saying that if you do something wrong, a Dybbuk is going to enter you. I don't know. They don't ask me in Shamayim what I think. What I am telling you is that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrote in his Torah, it's critical. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that immorality is so bad, it's considered one of the 3 cardinal sins, where it's better for a person to die than commit that sin. As the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim says, if it's idolatry, or if it's idolatry, if it's immorality, or if it's murder, a person is better off dying than actually committing those sins. Now, even though you hugging your coworker, you hugging your cousin, you doing all of these things that seem innocent and perhaps even normal in society today, you should know that this is forbidden according to the Torah. It's called Avizarayu de Gilui Arayot, meaning the step before the actual immorality, the step before the pretty much line being crossed, or what would bring a person to it, enticing yourself to bring to that. So the Ramban, in essence, is trying to get us prepared for our wedding night. For our wedding night, and not just the wedding night that is, once when you get married, but rather the wedding night that happens in a Jewish home every month. The wedding night is the time with the woman, after she is purified from the menstrual cycle, she waited the appropriate amount of days, she went to the Mikvah, she comes home. That night is supposed to be no different than your wedding night. In fact, it's supposed to be even better, because you have increased the love and affection over those years. The more years, the more love and affection. But unfortunately, we live in a world where many people don't have that. And part of the reason is because they don't actually know how to be husbands. They don't know how to be wives. They don't know what's required of them. And this is one of the purposes of this series. The Gemara in Masechet Eruvim, page 100, says that if we didn't have the Torah to instruct us, we would learn intimacy from the rooster. Why? Because the rooster, before he gets the chicken to agree to be with him, he impresses upon her. He dances, he shows his crown off. And the Gemara says that he speaks to her in the chicken language, promising her that he'll buy her a fancy dress. And if he doesn't get her this dress, she could even take his crown. In so many words, the rooster each time impresses the chicken in order to entice her. And the Gemara says, this is one of the critical things that a man needs to know each and every single month, each and every single time. If you don't do this, the rooster knows more about women than you do. Now, one of the reasons why people have a difficulty with this is simply because of their wrong perception of what intimacy is supposed to be, whereby they focus on their desire much more than they focus on what's supposed to actually happen. So much so that their desire overcomes anything else that they've learned, or even they're supposed to know, or common sense, and this in itself destroys the quality of the actual act. Now, if a person does not understand that the act of intimacy is considered holy in Judaism, it's supposed to be holy, if you do it the right way, like we've discussed in the last 30 or so lectures, then you'll know that under no condition are you allowed to miss Mikvah night. Mikvah night is supposed to be like a holiday. So when I get messages from different people around the world, both males and females, that tell me that they haven't been intimate in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years, in one case I think it was something like almost 10 years, it's baffling to me how these people, number one, are still married, and number two, in many of the cases, are still considering themselves religious. Of course, it all has a reason of why they haven't been intimate. Everyone thinks they have a reason. But one of the initial questions that's usually asked right away, or usually right, after you get other questions answered, as just to get to know the people, is, what did you do on Mikveh night? What did you do on Mikveh night? Sometimes the woman says, I haven't gone. Other times say, no, I go, but nothing happens. Either by the time I come home, he's already sleeping, or I'm just not really interested. I do the mitzvah, but I don't complete it. And they don't realize that if they ate pig with cheese, it actually may be less of a sin. Why? Because Rabotay Karim, Mikveh night is a very, very big deal in Jewish life. Mikveh night is a critical night in Jewish life. Because if there's no intimacy, there's no marriage. Now, in order for intimacy to be what it's supposed to be, there are certain things that need to take place before it. Much of it we discussed before, but we're going to continue what the Ramban is telling us here and try to go with him literally, him holding our hands to learn how to be a husband. If I'm about to get married, whether it's for the first time or it's my monthly marriage, how am I supposed to be a husband? And actually entice my wife to want to be my wife, to want to be my bride. How am I supposed to do this? If a person is a wife, how is she supposed to be that bride? Even though 10 years have passed since she wore the wedding dress. How is she supposed to act? What is she supposed to do? The Ramban is telling us that how you behave before you got to the house is of critical importance, because it's going to affect how you are once you get to the house. You can't just start getting ready for intimacy off the cuff just because you feel it. We're not horses. Secondly, if you're going to achieve Kedusha, you're going to achieve holiness, you have to act like a holy person. One of the most celebrated women that ever lived is a woman by the name of Kimchis, which the Gemara in Masechet Yoma, page 47, says that Kimchis was a very holy woman, to such an extent that all 7 of her sons became Kohanim Gedolim. It was such an unusual blessing that the sages came to her and asked her, how did you do it? And she said, in my entire life, not only was I modest, but I took upon myself even extra stringencies by making sure that even when I have to change my head cover, my mitpachat, I'm covering myself under some type of sheet. That even the walls in my house have never seen my hair. Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees all, but the effort that this woman exerted in order to achieve the ultimate modesty paid dividends beyond anyone's comprehension. So if a woman wants to have not just holy children, but even a holy marriage where your husband will believe, will know, will understand that you are the most beautiful thing in the world, the more modest you are, the more beautiful you are in his eyes. This is actually one of the secrets to eternal beauty. Many times people are misled to believe that the less clothes you have, the more provocative your clothes are, the more beautiful you are. But the truth is quite the opposite. Where you see that women that are modest have long-term happy marriages. Women that are immodest have many marriages, many divorces, and all of them have fights, adultery, and problems that you wouldn't even wish on your enemies. We see that these actions do affect our lives, even if it's not somebody knocking on your door and telling you, listen, you just made a sin. We see that all of these things do affect our lives. You see it in the divorce rate in Western society in comparison to more modest countries in the world. You see it in this generation in comparison to past generations. You see it simply your life versus your grandparents' life. And I'm not just talking about how they were married for 60 years and you're barely surviving your 6th month. I'm talking about just simply the appreciation between the husband and the wife in the past versus today. One of the main things that causes marriages to have problems is immodesty. But the other part that causes problems is when a person doesn't know their role and doesn't know how to play that role. And thereby the Ramban continues and starts to let us know what happens after you have complimented her, you have calmed down, you have gone to the point where wedding night is here. Now what? He must speak with her in the middle of the night or close to the third of the night. As it said in the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, page 3a, where it says, in the third watch, the baby nurses from the breast of his mother, and the woman talks with her husband. So here, from the plain sense of the words, if you read it just for literal meaning, you have no idea what's going on here. Where's the intimacy? That's because one of the things that the Ramban is teaching us here is that it's not just being holy, it's acting holy. And one of the prerequisites to acting holy is speaking in a clean language. Just like the sages did, and needless to say, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu does in the Torah, where unlike all of the other languages that have an endless supply of words to define the male and female sex organs, there is no actual word in the holy language for the male organ. It's called erva. Erva means nakedness. The same concept is when it's describing these types of acts. This is the one place that the sages took extra caution of how they speak to make sure that there is clean speech. And therefore, when the Ramban says that he must speak with her in the middle of the night or close to the last third of the night, the Ramban is in essence telling us that this is the time where he must speak with her, meaning he must be intimate with her during this time. If you wanted to know the time of intimacy, when is the best time to be intimate, these are the two time frames. Either in the middle of the night which again is depending on where you are and which part of the year it is, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, which is considered the middle of the night, or close to the last third of the night. What's the last third of the night? Last third of the night is right before the sun comes up, right before daybreak, I should say. Why is this the case? The Zohar Kadosh in Parashat Beshalach, page 46a, says that the unity of the Shekhinah Elyonah, the upper Shekhinah, takes place at the end of the night. And therefore, it is an ideal time for intimacy, right before daybreak. If one is not able to be together in the middle of the night, this is the other great window. Why? Because as we've learned from the preceding lectures of this series, that one of the goals of achieving the ultimate holiness during intimacy is in essence to connect the mind to the upper heavens, to connect the mind to the Creator, to the Shekhinah. Now, of course, again, simply being, appropriate and clean, that in itself is already an achievement for some people. But the point being is that the Ramban is talking to us as if we are all Torah scholars, we're all holy, and we're simply trying to nail this one to the best of our ability in order to be like him, in order to be like the great sages. So of course, everyone will have to act in their level. This point is that we know where to shoot, but that doesn't mean that we have to be there tomorrow. As I've said in the other lectures, and it's highly recommended that everyone reviews all those lectures many times, both husband and wife, or people that are single and don't really know when marriage is even going to happen. It's good for everyone. Why? Because these lectures will tell you how to think when it comes to the issues of Kedusha. Now, the Ramban is telling us that he must speak with her in the middle of the night, close to the last third of the night, and he's using this clean speech. One of the other examples that we can see how the sages speak and how important this is in the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim. It gives us a few examples of clean speech. Why is this of importance? Because if you have clean speech in your day-to-day behavior, you'll have clean speech during precious times like this. If you have a dirty mouth during the day, you'll have a dirty mind and more during the night. So the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 3b says, there were two students that were sitting before Rav. Rav is Rabbi Abba. He was one of the students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And one of them said, wow, studying like this, I'm so tired. I'm tired like a pig. The other student said, wow, studying so hard. I'm so tired. I'm tired like, a kid. What's a kid? A kid, either you could use it as a kid, as a child, or a kid meaning as the animal. That's the baby calf, let's say. Or a deer, or whatever it is, the little animal. But it's a kid. In so many words, the examples they used were animals, but were very, very different. One compared himself to a pig. The other one to a beautiful little cute animal. Rav heard this and did not speak to the first one for some time. Why? If you're here studying with me and you still have such a dirty mind that you compare yourself to a pig, apparently there's something wrong. Another example is when there were two students that were sitting before Hillel. One of them was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, the great Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who thanks to him we have an oral Torah today. And the other were two students, those sitting before the Rav. One student asked, why must a person harvest grapes with utensils that are in a state of purity and yet doesn't need to harvest olives with utensils that are in a state of purity? The other one asked, why must one harvest grapes with utensils that are in a state of purity, and the other one harvest olives that with utensils that are in a state of tuma, impurity? From this, just simply from those words, which again, to the average person right now listening, including the reader, seem, what's the big deal? Okay, so one said purity and purity, the other one said purity and impurity. That was enough for Hillel to determine, I am certain about this first student that he will become a big posek and will render legal decisions for Am Yisrael. Just from that manner of clean speech, choosing his words carefully, Hillel knew he's going to be big. He's going to be something special. Another last example, before we move on, that there was 3 Kohanim. 3 Kohanim at the time of the Bet HaMikdash who received a piece of the Lechem HaPanim. Lechem HaPanim, for anyone who doesn't know, that's the 12 loaves of bread that were in a very unique square shape that miraculously stayed hot for a week. They would make them, they would put them in a specific place and leave them there for a week. There's no microwaves, there's no ovens, there's no nothing. They're just leaving them out there for a week, and they stayed hot, and then a week later, that's when they take them out and replace them with new ones. And the ones they've taken out, they distribute among the Kohanim. Since there were so many Kohanim, each one got a small piece. So at one time there was this case, and 3 of the Kohanim that got a piece, since it was so small, had a comment to make. One of the people said, this piece is the size of a bean. Another one said, this one is the size of an olive. And the third one says, mine is like the size of a lizard's tail. What? You compared the Lechem HaPanim of the Bet HaMikdash to an impure animal? Okay, so he said something wrong. No, something's wrong. Comparing it to an olive, comparing it to a bean, no problem. But you compared it to an impure animal? Something's wrong. Something is wrong. They investigated the matter and they confirmed that this Kohen was a halal. What's a halal? His father married a woman that he's not allowed to marry, and therefore he lost his keuna. He wasn't allowed to work in the Bet HaMikdash. He wasn't a Kohen. Just simply from that. Here we see, Rabotai, the impact of clean speech in places that you would never think. Now, of course, we don't have the Rabban Yochanans and the Hillels of 2,000 years ago, but clean speech still matters. Clean speech still affects your behavior, and it certainly affects your marriage. So that's why when you read the words of the sages, you can't read things literally. You have to understand what they mean. And that's why commentary is important. That's why learning with Talmidei Chachamim is important. So you actually understand what's being said. Because if we simply read this, like the idol worshippers read the Torah, where they read things literally and they just simply interpret it the way they want, would never understand anything. So here we see that the Ramban is telling us he must speak with her in the middle of the night. In order to teach us that your speech in itself also has to have modesty, also has to have a certain level of holiness. But then he tells us that this is based on a Gemara, where the Gemara says that in the third watch, meaning during this third hour, the baby nurses from the breast of his mother, and a woman talks with her husband. Again, woman talks with a husband is in essence implying intimacy. Now, why does the Gemara say that the woman talks with the husband before intimacy? Why doesn't it say the same thing what the Ramban said, that the husband speaks with her? Well, first, the Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin, page 49b, says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought down to the world 7 levels of speech, meaning the desire to speak has 10 levels. 9 of them were given to women, and 1 to men. Hence the reason why women have a need to speak much more than men do. And that's why it says, Deisha misaperet, that the woman speaks. Because unlike the ish, unlike the man, who just wants to fulfill the desire, or if he's a little holier, he wants to fulfill the mitzvah, the isha, the woman, also has a desire to unveil what's in her heart, to unveil what's on her mind. Meaning she needs to speak about things that are on our heart, things that are on our mind. Something happened. Something that's going on. Because unlike the man that wants to fulfill the desire, or even if he wants the mitzvah, and he's ready for it, she also needs to speak in order to create an emotional connection before she's intimate. The man, naturally, doesn't need this. But the woman does. So what's the man to do? Says Rabbi Abba, that the man must know that this conversation is part of intimacy. And thereby it turns a baseless conversation, as the Gemara in Masechet Chagigah, page 5a says, that even the baseless conversations that a man has with his wife will be evaluated at the Beit Din of Shamayim. Now from that, seems like, wait, we shouldn't talk about anything nonsensical right now because, I don't know, maybe they'll punish me for it. No. If this conversation that the wife needs to have before intimacy is going to lead to actual intimacy, is going to make her more comfortable, is going to make her more connected to you, then this baseless conversation before intimacy turns into an act of mitzvah. So for example, if they are not able to be together at the midnight time frame, but rather at the second time frame we talked about, which is the end of the night before daybreak, she could simply, she just woke up and she's, still trying to get herself together. And he could say, how did you sleep? And once he says that, she starts saying to him, oh, I had a dream. Now, he doesn't feel like hearing about any dreams right now. Whether she saw her grandmother, or she dreamed that she was flying on an elephant, or she had some type of message that she thinks is prophetic. He doesn't really feel like doing it. He wants to be intimate. No. He must know that conversation is necessary in order for her to get her desire of unveiling what's in our mind and our heart. in order to create a unity. So you could ask her, how did you sleep? And she ends up telling him her dreams. Because apparently that's what's necessary in order for her to be prepared for unity. In order for her to be prepared for intimacy. Now, as a side note, when the Gemara says that in the third watch the baby nurses, and then the woman talks to her husband, the Gemara is also teaching us another rule. That it's forbidden for a woman to breastfeed her child after intimacy. Unless it's absolutely necessary, the baby's screaming and uncontrollably, and there's no other way. If she could first breastfeed the baby and then be intimate, that's the ideal situation. But if that's not necessary or not possible, and it's after intimacy, if possible, she should wait 18 minutes. But again, if the baby's screaming and going crazy and uncontrollable, and she has to do it, in less than 18 minutes after intimacy, then so be it. But ideally, it should be before intimacy altogether. If it's after, it should wait 18 minutes after intimacy is completed. So we see, even the words of the Gemara, every couple of words, every word, you learn another lesson. Now, the Ramban continues, and he says as follows: a man should never coerce his wife against her will, and never force her, meaning never rape her. For the Shekhinah never rests upon such conjugal relations, because his intent was the opposite of her intent and her mind. And her mind was not in agreement with his mind. This is of critical importance to aggressive, animalistic people that watch too many movies, have become desensitized that there's another person involved, simply care less, and just want to get their fix. If you do this, it's not only impossible for you to achieve any level of sanctity in your intimacy, in your marriage altogether, but it's also forbidden. And anytime something is said as forbidden, that means that the consequences are not ideal. Furthermore, the Ramban says, he must never argue with her and never beat her for the matters of conjugal relations. This is of critical importance because many of the messages that I've gotten over the years from couples, especially since we started this series, have this issue. Not usually the getting being physical to the point where the man beats the wife because of intimacy, but arguments. Arguments apparently are constant, where she doesn't want to be together, he is too tired, he wants this, she wants that, and there's so much arguing over the actual act that it kills any desire that they have in the first place. And anytime they actually are together, it's more of a chore. It's more of a burden than a pleasure. They simply can't wait for it to be over. This is a recipe for a disaster. Not just a disaster in Kedusha, not just a disaster in marriage, but a disaster in the entire home, because it will affect everyone that's in that household. Because when there is no pleasure in intimacy, and in fact the opposite, when there's arguing over intimacy, everyone suffers because this leads to arguing. This leads to disagreements. This leads to bitterness. This leads to all of the bad things that you'd never want. And from there, I want to really address a point, or 2 points really, that are as relevant today as they've ever been, where men must learn how to be gentlemen, hence the word gentleman meaning gentleman, and women must stop being manly. As I said earlier, we live in a generation where we have old people walking around as if they have all the time in the world until they pick their spouse. Or they're okay even without it. They're so picky about who is the perfect one, and if they're not picky enough, they're sure to have parents that are even pickier than you could ever be, that destroy any marriage potential. No one is ever good enough for their son. And certainly no one is ever good enough for their daughter. And this, Rabotai, has led into an entire generation where you have, instead of in the past, where people would get married at 13, 14 years old, 12 years old, in some cases even younger, but only consummate the marriage after they became adults. For a man, it's 13. For a woman, it's 12. And then later on, as time changed, 16, 17, 18 years old became a norm. Now, girls are not even considering marriage until they're late in their 20s, 25, 26, 29, 30. And all of a sudden, everyone's worried. She has to get married. Oh, how old is she? She's 32. What happened? How could she not find anybody for at least 14 years? I mean, 18. You're telling me for 14 years you couldn't find one person that's good for marriage? Everyone is bad. Everyone is deformed. Everyone is a problem except your daughter. She's 32 years old and no one is good for her. And you think that it's everyone's fault and not yours? No, you don't understand. We had one and it was good and everything looked great, but they wanted us to have more money. And we had another one and it was good, but it didn't really work out because he wanted to move to Israel. No. You're not understanding. If you've been looking to get married, you would have gotten married. You would have gotten married. Why? Because the Gemara gives us instructions when it comes to marriage. You want to get married? Lower your standards. Lower your standards. Stop looking for someone perfect. I'm not telling you go look in the garbage pail and see what you find. But if you are going to look for the perfect Mr. Wonderful Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to look for Mrs. Wonderful Sarah Imenu, guess what? You're not going to get married anytime soon. It's simply not going to happen. Why? No one will be good enough. And what ends up happening is that the people get older and the options get smaller. Because when she was 18, 19, and 20, many people were interested. Now that she's 30, less people are interested. And in fact, even those that are interested are usually not in her age group. They're not 30 wanting to marry 30. They're more like 45, 50-year-old that either are in their second marriage or simply have made the same mistake but for far too long. And she thinks, no, what do you mean? I'm only 32 years old. Why should I marry a 50-year-old guy? Why? Because it's better than being alone. Because if you don't, you may stay alone. Because This may very well be the best you can get. No, I think I can get better. Well, you thought that for the last 14 years. Did that work out for you? And that's the problem. When people look at superficial things like age or money or other looks, it ends up ruining any holiness they could ever get. Why? Because there's more to life than just an age, than just money, than just looks. Certainly there has to be some attraction. Certainly there has to be common ideology. But if you're truly looking to get married, you don't need to look for 14 years. Why? Because there's plenty of people that are also looking to get married. If you haven't found somebody after looking for 10 years, the problem is with you, not with everybody else. Now, of course, the people that are in this situation, like, no, come on, you don't understand what I went through. No. I do understand. I deal with it. I have many people that come to me. And the ones that get married, usually the ones that get married, they get married right away. Why? They're looking to get married. The people that come to me and they're looking for help, they get married right away. They find somebody, first, second person they meet, couple of months, finished. And guess what? Those people end up being the happiest people in the world. They weren't looking for perfection. They were looking to build a life. Can I build a life with you? Everything else is fixable. Money, a big nose, a certain place you live. Her brother is not a good guy. All of those things can be fixed. Question is, can you build a life together? If you can't build a life together, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Either with you and what you're looking for, or who you're looking at. Because sometimes people are looking at the wrong places. So, one of the things that you see has become all too common is people are waiting to find something better. And before you know it, he's in his 30s. He's in his 40s. He's in his 50s. And he still hasn't gotten married. And it's very, very important for them, in order for them to complete their tikkun, to achieve marriage, to actually start building a family. Stop being specific about her nationality, her height, all of these things. You just have to find somebody suitable to build a marriage with. Because once you know how to be a husband, once you know how to be a wife, everything else will be much better than you can imagine. But so long as you don't know how to be a husband or how to be a wife, even if you did get married, it won't turn out so happy. So when it comes to men, as I said before, men have to learn how to be men, how to be gentlemen. A gentleman doesn't mean that you become some feminine guy that wears tight jeans and looks in the mirror for 5 more minutes than his wife. That's not a gentleman. That's a problematic man. A man that is more attractive than his wife and takes care of himself just as much is going to have a very miserable wife. Why? Because unlike your wife, that is going to bring children to the world, and her looks are going to change, and is going to have major differences from pregnancy to pregnancy, your good looks, your extra effort to tweeze your eyebrows and show off your pecs and make sure that everyone recognizes that you spend 2 hours a day in the gym, that's going to create a very self-conscious wife. That's going to create a marriage that's going to have a hard time achieving holiness. Why? Because when the man is more focused on his looks than the wife is, the wife will usually suspect him of adultery. Why? Because she's self-conscious. especially during the time that she needs him the most, which is during the time where she's pregnant, depressed, having a difficult time. She gained some weight, she lost some weight, all of these different things that happen to a woman. So when a man doesn't really know how to be a man, there's no problem with exercising, there's no problem with grooming yourself, but to make it a thing, to make it like a focal point in your life, is going to make it very difficult for you to stay married. Because you're going to create a very self-conscious wife. And in fact, you're also going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to think of things that you shouldn't be thinking of. And that usually leads to immorality. And what ends up happening is that this could lead to adultery, this could lead to divorce, this could lead to a lot of problems. Another thing is, men that is unfortunately has become common, has not only taken care of himself like a woman, but also has somehow adopted the emotions of women. You know, feminine men, where they like to, I don't know how to explain it, but they like to act like women. And in fact, they even have some female friends. Oh, she's my best friend. If your best friend is a woman, it's not a healthy thing. Not for your marriage and not for your olam haba. So, again, I'm not telling you that everyone has to be some construction worker or some guy that works in some plant, taking gold out of the ground with his bare teeth. What I'm saying is that men have to learn how to be men. And if you don't know how to be a man, it's going to be very hard for you to find somebody, because you're always going to want something that is either at your level or above, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do if you want to have a healthy life. You want to have a healthy life? Don't look for the perfect 10. I'm not saying look at zeros, but you have to understand that there is more to life than just physicality. Now, if a man is not one of these feminine men, but he's not a gentleman, he's more like a stingy man, a nasty man, an arrogant man, a wicked man, corrupted man, a womanizer man, one of these tools that's in the world, even if you find some innocent, naive girl to fall for your arrogance as if you deserve to be arrogant, and you're entitled to be arrogant, you should know, as the marriage grows and the face masks fall off, and she sees you one day show your true colors, that you don't really believe that you are as great as you say you are, and she sees you at your low points, and she knows that the whole thing is a facade, and she herself also matures, and she herself also knows that there's more to life than just walking around as if what comes out of your body is roses, unlike the rest of mankind, then guess what? Eventually, she'll be sick of you. And even get to a point where she's disgusted of you. Where even if you have a six-pack, even if you can tear trees out of the ground with your teeth, she'll never want to be with you intimately. And if she is, it'll feel like a chore. Why? Your attitude, your personality, your mindset, your ideology has become disgusting to her. And the only choice that's left in her mind is simply to have you as a roommate, but not as a husband. Because the Gemara promises people that are arrogant ultimately even their own family will hate them. In the beginning, especially in a society like we have today, where society applauds, celebrates, and idolizes arrogant people, eventually, the Gemara promises that even their own family will hate them. Eventually, the facade is enough. You want to be arrogant, you want to be all these things that you are in your job, somewhere else, do whatever you want. But the fact that you're bringing it to the house, we can't stand it anymore. No one's going to want to be next to you. No one's going to want to talk to you. Even the kids won't want to hear a bedtime story from you. Nothing. And worse of it all, your wife's not going to want to be with you. Why? You could be beautiful to everyone else physically, but to her, you're disgusting. Because she knows what your true colors are. She knows that as soon as she messed up and she forgot to clean something, she forgot to buy something, she forgot to say something, you started yelling like somebody killed somebody, you started acting like some mule. You became disgusting to her. And to fix that is very difficult. Very, very difficult. And as difficult as it is to fix that with your wife, it's multitudes more difficult to fix with your kids once they can't stand you. And it's not that they can't stand you because you're not good looking. It's not that they can't stand you because those genes don't define your body. No. They can't stand you simply because of your attitude. Simply because you're a man that doesn't know how to be a man. You don't know how to be a gentleman. You know how to be some thug that looks sophisticated when you wear a suit. So, if a person wants to be a man, learn from the rooster. That's what the Gemara says. Learn from the rooster. What's the rooster do? The man, once he's married, he has a wife, he's going to do everything he can to make her feel like she's the most beautiful woman in the world. The Rabbanit, God bless her, she told me one time, after I gave her a compliment, and she says, you know, women know that when their husbands give them compliments sometimes, like she's beautiful or whatever it is, they know that their husband is lying about it. But they like to hear it anyway. They like to hear it anyway. Why? It shows you care. She doesn't care what you feel as far as beautiful, not beautiful, the food's good, the food's not good. The fact that you did it shows you care. So even if she knows he's lying, she doesn't care. She doesn't care. Why? Because the husband has made one of his priorities in his marriage to make his wife feel good. Feel good about her looks, no matter if it's before a pregnancy or after a pregnancy. Feel good about whatever it is that she's doing, whether she's cooking or she's raising the kids or whatever it is she's doing. Even if something doesn't work out, he's never there to criticize her. He's never there to go yell at her and make an example out of her. And needless to say, never in front of the kids. Sure, there are going to be some disagreements at times. If there's no disagreement, that's usually because you guys are in two different parts of the world. If you're married for long enough, you're going to have disagreements. But guess what? Disagreements are going to be the times where you find out whether you truly love each other or not. That's what Rabbi Ephraim says to new couples. Do you know when you're going to know whether you love each other? After the first fight. When a man knows how to be a gentleman, he's going to do whatever he can to make his queen feel like a queen. And it's not just about buying flowers or buying gifts, although you have to. As the Chachamim teach us, on Rosh Chodesh, it's like a holiday for the women. She should do less work. Get her a gift. If you could afford it, even buy her jewelry. On holidays, on Shabbat. Why? Why do the sages tell us that we have to constantly buy our wives presents? Because it's an expression of how we feel. Even if all you could afford is to pick a flower from the garden, if you did it, you did a good job. Why? You thought about her. And that's enough. If you could afford to buy her an airplane, buy an airplane. But how many airplanes can you buy? The point being is that if you know what your job is as a man, you're going to see whether you're succeeding or not based on how your wife feels. If she wants to spend time with you, she wants to be intimate with you, she wants to sit next to you, she wants to talk to you, she wants to support you. She's happy to be with you. She's not looking to take a vacation with her friends. She's not looking to be away from you. She's not picking on you to look for fights. And even when she's not happy about something, she talks about it in a certain way where she knows that everything can be fixed and it's not worth making a commotion out of it. You'll see it. Even when she's down on herself, whether it's because of her looks or because something didn't work out with the kids or because of something didn't work out somewhere else, she knows she can go to you to lift her up, to raise her, to give her support. If you know how to be a man, you'll see that on your wife. But if you are so focused on your tight jeans and fitted shirts and how much money you have in the bank and which investment you made and which investment you're going to make and how everyone thinks about you and who said this or that about you and what was the last tweet that people commented on, then guess what? You're not going to have time to be a man. You're not going to have time to be a man. If you don't have time to be a man, you don't have time to achieve Kedusha. On the other hand, when it comes to women, as I said, women have to stop being manly. While men have to learn how to be gentlemen, women have to stop being manly. What does it mean, women have to stop being manly? A woman that wants a happy marriage, that wants a successful marriage, that wants Kedusha, has to know that she has to be more submissive and less of a leader. If she's going to boss her husband around, ultimately, he will hate her. Ultimately, that husband will hate her. Even if he himself is one of these weak type of character guys that is more like a sheep than he is a wolf and just pretty much goes with the flow, he's still going to hate her. He may not say it, but he'll feel it. And that will affect the Kedusha. That will affect the intimacy. If she's going to be one of these powerhouse women that wants to conquer the world, wants to, be like one of these emperors. She wants to build businesses. She wants to everything to, work in a certain way. She wants to push our weight around. You're not going to achieve Kedusha that way. Why? If you do that with your husband, it's going to be a very, very unhealthy marriage. And eventually what ends up happening is that the husband will hate her. If necessary, and you need to work because not enough what's coming in from your husband as far as his job, and you need to work, there's no problem with working. But it depends what kind of job you have. It depends what kind of job you have. Just because the family needs money doesn't mean that you throw all the rules into the garbage. Certain jobs are completely unacceptable. Working in an office full of men, it's not acceptable if you want to have a holy marriage. Going away on trips with your coworkers, not acceptable. Being in one of these fields where it's a very full of immorality and all types of senseless people, it's very difficult for you to have holiness in your house if you're going to take part of it. Now, if you work at one of these companies, and many people are doing whatever it is, they're acting like animals, but you stay reserved, you stay holy, you don't take part of it. The office could have 50 parties, you're not attending them. The office could have 50 trips to Hawaii and back. You're not attending. No problem. But if you're going to be one of these people that wants to be like one of the guys, it's going to be very hard for you to have holiness. Why? Because your husband is never going to feel secure in his marriage. Even if you say, I love you, honey, that may actually cause him to be suspectful of what's happening. Why is Steve from your office calling you at 9 o'clock at night? Why'd you laugh after that call? What did he say? What did that one say? If you start becoming friendly with people instead of keeping it professional, it'll create problems in your life. And when a woman forgets that her job is to be a woman, she could even become the person that is the Torah scholar in the house. Now, it's certainly important for a woman to learn. But one of the first lessons that a woman needs to learn as a wife is that the top priority in her life, aside from fulfilling the halachot of modesty, family purity, top priority as a woman that's a wife is to get her husband to learn Torah. Top priority. More than making money, more than anything else. Get your husband to learn Torah. And I don't mean get your husband to learn Torah by sending him to some place and I'll see you in 20 years because you really can't stand him, and that's why. You're not Rachel, Rabbi Akiva's wife. But rather you're more like, see you, but hopefully never again. No. Rachel missed Rabbi Akiva dearly. Rabbi Akiva missed Rachel dearly, but they knew they needed to make a sacrifice beyond the norm for the times. A woman today needs to know that if she's the only one going to Shiurei Torah, if she's the only one that's excited about Torah, she's not doing her job. Now she's going to say, wait, but I tried telling him to come. He didn't want to. I tried telling him to watch the shiur, but he didn't want to. You're right. He didn't want to. But somehow when you asked him to buy you a new car and he didn't want to, somehow you got him to do it. And somehow when you asked him to take you on vacation and he didn't want to because it was expensive and you guys were struggling, somehow you got him to do it. And somehow when you needed that bag that you really couldn't afford, but you had to have it because your friends had it, and he really told you, I can't afford it, I'm going to have to borrow money. Somehow you got him to do it. Meaning that when it came to other things that you wanted him to do, somehow you figured out a way to do it. But when it comes to Torah, you're already raising your hands. I tried and it didn't work. Why didn't you do that with the bag? Why didn't you do that with the vacation? How come you didn't say, listen, I asked you for a car. You don't want to do it? Okay, fine. I'm just going to walk everywhere. I'm going to give up. I'm not going to ask anymore. How come you didn't say that then? Why did you keep asking every day until he got it? Why did you cry because you needed a refrigerator? Why did you cry because you wanted that ring? Why did you make a big deal over that vacation? Did you cry over him coming to Shiur Torah? Did you make a big deal over him watching the Shiur Torah? Did you wake him up in the middle of the night over the Shiur Torah? No. How come? Oh, you know how come? Because you feel good that at least you went. And you think that, oh, I went to the Shiur Torah. I watched the Shiur Torah, so I'm good. No. You're not good. Your job as a woman is to get your husband to learn Torah. You tried and you failed, try again. How long? Forever. But what happens is, Rabotai Karim, is a woman becomes manly. And in so many words says, listen, he's not learning Torah, he's missing out. I'm going to learn Torah. Rabbi Reuven's the best. Rabbi, this one is the best. She starts becoming a little Torah scholar. She reads books. She watches lectures. On Shulchan Shabbat, she starts giving a Dvar Torah. The husband has nothing to say. And when he said something that he heard somewhere in the shul or somewhere, she cut him off and said, no, it wasn't Yaakov. It was Avraham. She became the Mara Da'atra and corrected her husband because she's a Talmidah Chachama. And she destroyed his confidence and his desire to ever learn anything again. She became a man. You see, Rabotai Karim, when a woman forgets to be a woman, and she views what I just said as chauvinist, sexist, or other type of ist, she's for sure not going to have holiness in her life, even if she knows the Shas by heart. She's not going to have Kedusha in her intimacy, because the Kedusha has to be achieved by both of them, not by one. If she's the man, who's the woman? So it's important for a person to know where they stand. And that's why sometimes when people ask me for different guidance, whether it's about marriage or it's about shidduch, usually I try to get a gauge of their personality trait. And sometimes I see that honestly, I don't really want to get involved in such a thing. Let somebody else take this job. Why? This is a person that's going to torture their spouse. This is a person that's really, I don't know, not a person that you would want to marry. She'll be a man-eater. He'll be one of these destructive husbands. Gambler, degenerate, womanizer, whatever it is. So it's important for a person to know what their role is. I've said this many times over the years. I even have, I think, at least a couple of lectures about this, knowing your role. And more than anything else, if you are already married and you don't know your role, you could be certain that you can't achieve your role. And this type of mentality will destroy your Kedusha and your ability to create Kedusha, especially when it comes to intimacy. Because eventually, you either become disgusting to your spouse, or they simply can't stand you, or they hate you, they can't wait to go on a trip for work, they can't wait to go to work. They can't wait to go to the bathroom just so you're not there. Why? Because you don't know how to do your job. Now, I'm not saying that the job of being a husband or the job of being a wife is easy. It's quite the opposite. It's hard. But it's worth it if you know how to do it. But what ends up happening when people don't know how to do it, when the man is no longer a gentleman, and is not even trying to be, and he thinks that he can buy happiness with money rather than with good, sweet words, when the woman doesn't know how to be a woman, but she's more likely like a man, even though her body looks different, this leads to problems in the house, leads to fights, which ultimately lead to no intimacy. When there's no intimacy, the relationship deteriorates more than anything else out there. Even if there's poverty, even if there's difficulties, even if there's all types of issues, so long as there's intimacy, there's a marriage. But when there's enough bitterness, hatred, distance between the couple to the point where they've lost desire to be intimate, this magnifies everything on the negative side. When there's a fight, the fight is much worse. Instead of the fight being start the fight, finish the fight, make up, I love you, I'm sorry, the end, all within the same 24 hours, it ends up being to not talking to each other for a week. It ends up crossing the line by saying, I want a divorce. It ends up being very malicious by making fun of each other's family or some type of soft spot. Everything is worse. This in itself also worsens the likelihood of achieving Kiddushin and intimacy, because now that he called you fat, now that you called him a loser, now that you said, I'm going to go back with my ex-girlfriend, now that she said, I should have married the first guy, the next time that they are intimate, even if they've actually started being intimate, those thoughts come back. Is she thinking about him? Is he thinking about her? Is this, is that? And if those thoughts are in your mind, there is no chance in the world that Kedusha could be achieved. The Shekhinah is gone. It's nowhere near the vicinity. This could also lead to adultery and, of course, ultimately divorce. Now, if a person knew how much they benefit from marriage and achieving Kedusha, achieving holiness, literally they would make it one of the top priorities in their life, if not the top priority. And the Ramban here is telling us that if you have gotten to the point where you are arguing over conjugal relations, this is a sign of a very serious problem in your relationship that must be addressed right away. Now, he continues by saying, our sages told us in the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, page 49b, that one should never allow his daughter to marry a Am Haaretz, an ignoramus person that doesn't study Torah. Why? Because if he's an ignorant person, doesn't learn Torah, he's going to act like a lion in bed. Not in a good way. Not in a holy way. Not in a gentleman way. But the opposite. That just as the lion tears at his prey and eats shamelessly, so does an ignorant man strike his mate and cohabit with her shamelessly. He'll be one of these people that literally hits his wife, just like the Arabs do. When the Hashem raped the poor Jewish woman during October 7th. These vicious animals that beat their own wives on a regular basis. One poor Jewish woman that came to Rav Ephraim, she married an Arab, and then she ran away from him after years of getting a beating. Why? Because even those beatings weren't as bad as the last one, where she simply told him she didn't want to be intimate. So he took one of the tools from the garden and smashed her in the face and broke all of her teeth. To him, in his vicious animalistic ideology, it's perfectly normal. Guess what? If you don't learn Torah, you're a small throw away from being like that. Marrying a man that doesn't learn Torah, being a man that doesn't learn Torah, nothing's going to stop you from being like a beast. Nothing will stop you from being like a beast. And that's what the Gemara says, never let your daughter marry an ignoramus. Now, for those people that are part of the picky society, that haven't found Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, and are not willing to lower their standards, are not willing to make exceptions, are too focused on their career, don't necessarily think they need to get married, this is for you. I've brought this in the past, but a Talmid Chacham from Dina Online put a nice write-up with a bunch of different additional sources. Whereas I've told you guys in the past, when a Jewish man and a woman get married, their sins get forgiven. And the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Masechet Bikurim, chapter 3, halacha number 3, says 3 people whose sins are atoned for: an ill person, a groom, and one who ascends to a position of authority. If Hashem lifts you to become Rishon LeZion, or big rabbi of some kind, big position, you should know Hashem forgave your sins. If someone got really sick, Hashem Yachem, got cancer or something like that, Hashem forgave your sins. Why? It's a big atonement. But also, if you are now going to get married, you should know, as long as you have a kosher wedding with no mixed dancing and no immorality, and you're going to have a holy Jewish wedding, that day is going to be better for you than Yom Kippur. Why? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is forgiving your and her sins that you made up till now. And the Yerushalmi brings Esav as a source, where the book of Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 28, verse 8 and 9, says that Esav saw that the daughters of Canaan were displeasing to his father Yitzchak, and so Esav went to Ishmael and he took Machlat, the daughter of Ishmael. Later on we found out in chapter 36, verse 3, that Machlat was not really her name. Her name was Basmat. So why was she called Machlat? Says the Gemara, the Torah is telling you that HaKadosh Baruch Hu machalo, he forgave his sins. He obtained mechila, obtained pardon for his transgressions up to that point. Esav Rasha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave him up to that point because of that marriage. Of course, there's a machloket. Some Chachamim say that he intended it, but he really stayed married to 2 wicked idol worshippers, so it wasn't forgiven. Long story short, that's the source. The Gemara in Masechet Yevamot, page 63b, says in the name of Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina, once a man marries a woman, his iniquities crumble. Mitpakikin. As it says in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 22, whoever finds a wife finds good, and finds vayafek, finds favor in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rashi explains, the term mitpakikin, or pkak, means that a bottle cap or a covering, that the sins of the groom are capped and no longer observable. Meaning, you got married, you got yourself a new life. And that's why the Rama, in the Shulchan Aruch, Even HaEzer, he says that the most Ashkenazim and some Sfaradim have the custom of the bride and groom fasting on their wedding day. And there are several reasons for this. And the Moshav Skenim, LeBaalei HaTosfot, and also the Tashbetz, which is Rabbeinu Shimshon, the Talmid of the Maharam of Rothenburg, writes that the bridegroom fasts on his wedding day because his sins are being atoned for on this day. And since it's the bridegroom's personal Yom Kippur, he's obligated to fast. And the Mateh Shlomo adds that this is the reason that some people have the custom that the groom wears a kittel to his chuppah to remind him of his atonement. As the Pasuk says in Isaiah chapter 1 verse 18, if your sins prove to be like crimson, they will become white as snow. Furthermore, the Shlach Kadosh in Shara Otiyot, Kedushat HaZivug, writes, and the groom and bride must purify themselves to the utmost when entering the chuppah. Firstly, it's known what our sages write in the Yerushalmi, Masechet Bikurim, that the Holy One, blessed be He, forgives them, meaning both the man and the woman, the bride and the groom, forgives them for all of their sins on this day. And therefore they should do tshuva before their chuppah, because it has been accepted in all communities to fast. And they should arouse themselves to do tshuva. And after this, they should enter the chuppah and pray to Hashem to bring His Shekhinah to reside between them. As our sages said in the Gemara Masechet Sotah, page 17a, a man and a woman who merit, the Shekhinah rests between them. And thereby the Ben Ish Chai writes in Shana Aleph, Parashat Shoftim, section 13, that it's a minhag, it's a custom for the bridegroom to fast on the day that he enters the chuppah, because one who marries is forgiven for all of his sins, and he needs to merit of his fast. Where through the fast he will have broken the heart. He will have a broken heart and be open to do tshuva. But all of these are saying that it's not just forgiving for the sins, it's connected to tshuva. Why? The Sdei Chemed quotes Rabbi Yoshiyahu Pinto in Kesef Nivchar Chaye Sarah in Drush Bet, where he says that all of these sources are indicating that the sins are capped, where they're sealed, according to the Gemara, where the wedding day brings the groom's life to a point where all of his behavior is evaluated. Like on Yom Kippur. If after his wedding the bridegroom changes his behavior, his past sins are forgiven and turned into merits. This is in essence, his wedding is like doing tshuva me'ahava, tshuva from love. His sins turn into merits, says the Sdei Chemed, according to Rabbi Yoshiyahu Pinto, from 600 years ago. Just like a Baal Tshuva, but not just any Baal Tshuva, Baal the highest level of Baal Tshuva. But if the groom continues with his bad behavior, he's punished for his past sins, even those that are before his wedding. And that's why the Gemara says that whoever finds a wife finds good and obtains the favor of Hashem. And if one finds a wife and makes positive changes in his behavior, thanks to her, all of his past actions will be beloved by Hashem because his sins become merits. And his tshuva is readily accepted. If one takes advantage of it, he could turn his sins into merits. But if not, he gets punished. He gets punished, Hashem Yirachim. Why is there forgiveness? The Prisha writes in Even HaEzel, chapter 1, Siman 6, that by marrying, a person is doing the will of Hashem and procreating. And therefore it's a favorable time, and his sins are not seen. This is the meaning of the verse where he found a wife, he found good, and has obtained favor from Hashem. The Ktav Sofer in Parashat Vayishlach writes that a woman is called a choma, a wall, because she saves her husband from sins and assists him in improving his ways after his marriage. A man proves that the reason that he sinned before his marriage was only because he was lacking a wife to assist him, and therefore it's justified to have his sins absolved. The Rosh Sirlo in Masechet Bikurim writes that a groom is like a newborn child who is not condemned for his past. The Mari Chaviv, in his commentary on En Yaakov, writes that when a man enters the greatest commitment of his life, meaning he gets married, selflessly resolving to make his own interests secondary to the welfare of his wife and the needs of their marriage, he is worthy of being forgiven for the sins that he committed in the past, and he is like a new creature. In Chidushei Agadot, the Maharal says that a married man is a completely new person, not the same as the one who sinned. And the Shla Kadosh and also the Elia Rabbah both agreed that it's both the bride and the groom that have their sins erased. That's why they both fast. In fact, the Elia Rabbah says, along with Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, that this atonement even happens on a second marriage, just like it did on the first one. Meaning you got married, it didn't work out, divorce, but now you want to rebuild a new holy home. This gift that's unlike anything else out there is available to you also. And that's why it's become an Ashkenazi minhag for the bride and the groom to fast on their wedding day. And even some Sephardi keilot do it. The ones that don't do it do other fasts like Tani Dibbuk, or they learn more Torah. Rabbi Ephraim, God bless him, I remember he told me that on his wedding day, while they were waiting, he gave a shiur Torah to all of the people, hundreds of people that came to the wedding early. He gave them the shiur Torah. Point is, Rabotai Karim, no one is clean from sin, especially single people. You not getting married is not only eliminating your ability to achieve real Kedusha, so much so that the Gemara says that the Torah that you learned before you got married is as if it's nothing in comparison to the Torah that you learn after you get married. So not getting married because you don't care, because you don't want to, because you're too picky, is not only eliminating your chance of achieving Kedusha, but also it's eliminating your chance of wiping your slate clean from whatever you did up until now. And this pertains both to men and women. And that's why Jewish intimacy is of critical importance, because it doesn't just tell us about the act. It tells us about the meaning, the purpose, the potential. To finalize this section, the Ramban continues and says to us, instead of acting like a beast, like a lion, like an Arab, one should attract the heart of his wife with words of charm and seduction and decent speech, So he said seduction and decent speech. Usually those two things in the common language today are the opposite. No, you don't need to be a filthy, disgusting mouth in order for you to be seductive. You don't need to speak like you just came out of a sewer just to be enticing. You should not have intercourse with her while she's asleep, for her intentions are not united, nor are her thoughts in agreement with yours. Rather, awaken and arouse her with words of the kind that we've already spoken about. And when you've inspected yourself to ensure that you're properly ready for marital union, see that your wife's mind is in agreement with yours. In so many words, the Ramban is trying to teach us. Don't be like the fools that fulfill their desire to create love, when in reality, all they're doing is fulfilling their desire and create more lust. Create more desire, like a horse. The unification of the body between a husband and his wife is secondary to the unification of the mind to the mind and the heart to the heart. So when the Ramban is telling you decent speech, charm, seduction, don't think like the movies. Don't think like the streets. Don't think like the whole unholy people that you've seen growing up or at work or at school or wherever it is. Think Torah. Think holiness. Think clean, but effective. Tell her how beautiful she is. Tell her how she makes you happy. Tell him how he makes you happy. Tell him how you feel safe. Tell him how you love him. And whatever it is that you use that's clean and beautiful and attracting. Don't tell him about how you don't feel good and your back hurts and the kids were really terrible today and one of the workers quit and this guy didn't call you back and your girlfriend really made you upset during coffee. No, don't tell him any of those things. Not during, not before, not any time during the time that you're under the same roof. And you're looking to achieve Kedusha. Know this. If you unify just the body, you're no different than a cow and a bull. But if you unify the body, after you've unified your minds, after you've unified your hearts, your emotions are in line, your minds are in line, not only can you achieve Kedusha, but you could achieve pleasure, unlike anything else you could ever imagine. But this is also the reason why the Ramban gives a side warning to the man that he has to really inspect himself to ensure that he's ready for his marital union. Because this is not just to achieve your physical purpose. The Ravad even says, one of the sages, the Ravad says that a man is prohibited from being intimate with his own wife if he doesn't want to. Meaning, he doesn't need to. He doesn't have any actual desire. He has to have a desire. But that desire can be sparked by not just physical desire, but also by a unification of the mind, a unification of the heart. But in order to have those things, a man needs to be a gentleman that's aspiring to be a tzaddik. A woman has to not be a man. A woman has to be a woman. aspiring to be a tzadikah. How do you know you've become a tzaddik or a tzaddikah? When you are able to achieve this, even if it's once in a while, you're able to achieve Kedusha, even in your intimacy, you're certainly on a great path. You're not able to achieve it, but you're trying, you're also on a good path. But if you don't care, and all of this sounds like nonsense to you, you're a man that acts like a female, you're a woman that acts like a man, I'm surprised you listened this long. This, Rabotai Karim, is just another little tidbit from our holy sages and the beautiful Torah that we have. That's not just there to tell you what to eat, what not to eat, where to go in the morning, who to pray to. It even gives you clear instructions of how to achieve the highest level of holiness while also achieving the highest level of physical pleasure at the same time. The highest level of spiritual pleasure and the best possible marriage you could ever ask for. Now, I know most people that are watching this may very well be far away from achieving any of this. But that didn't stop you from watching it. Because you know that if you try, you can succeed. But not if you try alone. So if you're a woman that's watching this, get your husband to watch. Not just this one, all of them. Get your husband to learn Torah with us. Get your husband to learn Torah. Entice him. Convince him. Do whatever it is that you would do to get anything else in life, but even more so, because that's your purpose. If you're a man, get your wife to watch this. Get your wife to learn Torah with us. Why? It'll fix your life. Once your wife knows how to be a wife, you'll be the happiest husband in the world. Because she'll also know how you're supposed to be. And if you're both doing what the Ramban has been telling us in this series, who's better than you? Who's happier than you? Who's holier than you? In fact, you'll become the greatest people in each other's eyes. And you'll have a spark between each other greater than your wedding day. Lastly, for any of you that are marriageable age and have yet to get married, if it's due to your effort, I hope that tonight was enough of a slap, enough of a rebuke to get you to get your act together. If it's not due to your effort, it still should be a slap. You should still try harder. Even if it's not calling more shatchanim, but rather calling Hashem more often, praying about it, crying about it, doing mitzvahs for the sake of it. If you want to achieve holiness in this world and the next, you need to achieve Kedusha. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless each and every single one of you with a lot of success in all the good that you do, and give you an extraordinary amount of help, siyata dishmaya, to achieve Kedusha in your life, to look forward to Mikvah night, to look forward to seeing your spouse, to look forward to living life and serving Hashem. Kol tu b'cha v'atzlacha. Anyone that wants to donate, support all the things that we do can do it on our website, be'ezrathashem.org, or on YouTube, or on Facebook, and many other places. We also have our campaign of bhyeshiva.com to build a building here in South Florida for all of you that are able to help us do that, Be'ezrat Hashem. And last but not least, for anyone that wants to attend our live event that's coming up next week here in South Florida. Baruch Hashem, we have quite a few people that have already signed up and are even coming from different countries. From Brazil, from Canada, from different parts of the United States, are flying in to attend to this event. You want to come? You're more than welcome to. Go to bhchizuk.org. That's bhchizuk.org, and get yourself a free ticket, or free tickets, however many you want. And Bezrat Hashem, we're looking forward to seeing and learning together with all of you. Kol tu, bracha v'atzlacha. We'll learn again tomorrow.
אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל אשר יפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכרו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.